Hello, that's me again. Today is June 3rd, 2025. It is Tuesday, and let me start immediately because evidently I was also the recipient, quote unquote, of this PR attack by all kinds of, the trolls, and there are a bunch of the accounts, and from which people, all kinds of people, we know approximately who they are. They write all kind of garbage, and once the hype from this, which is terrorism, plain and simple, terrorist attacks in Russia kind of wore off a little bit, let me start again and try to reiterate the point which many people say, oh, why not you concentrate, on the fact that Russia was humiliated, it was, absolutely destroyed. Sure, yeah. So before we go there, let me explain. It is definitely very unpleasant to lose their 5 bombers. It has been confirmed, 5 bombers. 2 of them, Tu-95MCs, were completely destroyed. They burned, essentially. Other 3, it's questionable, may return. It depends after obviously what is called the assessment of their damage and decision on whether continue with the production, for example, of new ones, or just, don't forget, Russians have 90 heavy bombers and, 60 heavy bombers and 90 in operation. I mean, heavy bombers being, of course, Tu-160s, none of which suffered. And then, of course, Tu-95MCs, which are old planes since 80s, but they are capable of carrying very deadly weapons. And, of course, the 90 of those they were called at some point of time, because they're not really strategic bombers. They were called Euro bombers because they were very good at delivering at that time attacks on Europe. But Tu-22M3 is also not the new aircraft. Tu-22M3M, that's a whole other story. So, but Russians have 170 of them, and 150, and there are others in the immediate reserve, and plus how many in conservation, nobody knows. A lot, many. So I would say that probably at least 100 of others are ready to be basically reactivated, and it's not very long time, but it's beyond the point. So let's take a look at, and I'm not going to be discussing actually the issue of the so-called negotiations in Istanbul. Obviously, it is absolutely irrelevant. It lasted about 1 hour. They communicated something, turned around, and went their own ways, as was expected. Russia presented memorandum, which is basically, I don't know how many times I have to say it, it's ad nauseam. Same old, no change, either Russia's way or highway, and that's it. The only thing is to understand who Mr. Trump supports. Here we have this photo of one of the representatives there. He sits with the, sign of the 36 Volunteer Infantry Division SS, Sonderkommando SS of the Dir and Vanguard, which were known to be committing absolutely incredible atrocities against civilians. So there you go. So much for people, beautiful people, some Trump supports, and we now know, and I'll be talking about this shortly, why, for example, the United States cannot win a war. And I would, before going anywhere, I want to point out that the excellent interview yesterday of Alistair Crook, one of those few British gentlemen. As I already stated, I never stop, expressing my admiration towards his demeanor, towards his class, which oozes through him, and towards his thoughtfulness. That's the, British intelligence, which Soviet Union knew and respected them at that time. And he was speaking to Judge Napolitano, and Alistair Crook made a number of the critical points there when talking about the storm is brewing in the West. First, I love to point out that Alistair Crook absolutely flatly pointed out to Judge Napolitano about using the BBC propaganda. He called it propaganda. I don't know why Judge Napolitano. Obviously, it's the slip of the, I don't know what it is. It's, momentary lapse of reason. one, he definitely shouldn't have used the BBC propaganda, which is fed directly by the Ukrainians. And Alistair Crook, to his greatest credit, he absolutely, flatly stated it's propaganda. And actually people in comments to this wonderful video, they also reacted to this. However, I deliberately turned on the closed caption here, and so this is when the moment when Alistair Crook says that the West as usual miscalculated. And they did miscalculate, because obviously, how can I say it, when you begin to look at what is happening, and I'm being on record for non-stop, that you begin to understand that Washington, D.C. doesn't have competent people. And I mean it. And the point is, when everything is reduced to the gizmo or gadgets, they think that that's what, creates war or wins war. The only thing they are capable of is to spread BS in the industrial quantities. Be them CIA, who for some reason think that being terrorists somehow makes them honor, which it does not. But we know now that after this so-called strike, here we have New York Post. Look at this. So we have, okay, Ukraine wipes out dozens of Russian doomsday nuclear bombers. You see, that's the problem. And when you look at this, why didn't they go for hundreds? I don't know. But again, this is the average, establishment media in the West, which are primarily war criminals. They condone all kinds of atrocities and things of this nature. And when you look attentively, and anybody tells me that Mr. Trump didn't know that, no, he did. This is Mr. Yermak, the chief of the office of President Zelensky, talking to Mr. Kellogg, another nincompoop who, for some reason, special envoy. He's in Washington, D.C. He's been yesterday and today. And guess what? He probably went to essentially, state about the success of the Ukrainian armed forces, which, especially, killing Russian civilians with this train, which somehow all those American media and other foreign media, they forgot to mention. But here it is. And when you begin to look at why United States cannot win a freaking war in whatever capacity, here's the simple issue. I want to get you back to Rand, the paper of the Rand which I discussed in the last video. And as you can see yourself, they write there, and again, it's a laughable paper written by people who have no clue what they're talking about. So they talk about, again, reiterate, competency matters as much as, if not more than, technology. So they talk about the fight in Ukraine, which, again, they know only from the words of the GUR, which is the main intelligence directorate of the armed forces of Ukraine, and SBU and Ukrainian politician. And they talk about that, these intangible factors are also among the most challenging characteristics to assess in the absence of war, meaning military analysts must develop better analytic techniques for measuring them in the peacetime. I can tell you immediately, they failed before, they will continue to fail this, and I'm talking about all those so-called think tanks and people, let's say in the United States, who do this, assessment, as they talk about. They love to talk about it, and RAND is one of those fraudulent organizations which continues to feed all kinds of the garbage which they pick up from Ukrainians, which tells you about low professional level of the US military who is involved there on the top brass, and all kinds of those media organizations and so-called think tanks. Here's the proof. The Ukrainian military, again, publishes these numbers. And this is probably what Mr. Kellogg bases his conclusions on, because he doesn't have the toolkit as the, amateurish person from the other time when there was no real war. He wouldn't understand what real war is. And so what we have here is, for example, to understand. This is what Ukrainian military, fresh on the wave of this BS, which is of course supported by all, pardon me, American and Western media. Look what they say. Here's on the 3rd of June today. They say that approximately the losses of Russians. So okay, so what we have. Okay, we have 990,800, plus 1,100 for some reason today. Okay, so as you can see yourself, 413 aircraft plus 41. That's what they state. As I am on the record, whenever they say anything, divided by 10. Well, but here it is. So now they destroyed 413 Russian aircraft, 336 helicopters. So they destroyed 10,881 Russian tanks. And so as you can see yourself, when you look attentively at those, so basically Russia is defeated and should actually surrender and sign the, humiliating unconditional surrender, because Ukrainians evidently winning by a horrendous margin. So which tells you again, as I already stated, American generals, I don't know how many of them are really good professionals. Most of them are not. They are really there kissing for the political careers and essentially the comfortable retirement and some kind of the corporate business. But this is what Ukrainians tell them. Now, if that hasn't been enough, here is another thing. That's what they say, what Russia has left in terms of the missiles. Remember those first months of the special military operation that Russians are running out of missiles and are about to run out of it? Okay, this is what they say allegedly Russians have left. Okay, so they have about 600 Iskanders, maybe 300 Iskander K, whatever. Kinzhal, only 100, so only 300 X-101, and possibly lower than 400 calibers. And so if you look at that, I don't know, that those people just, pull it out of their asses and they sell it to the, people like Kellogg and like Trump. And Mr. Trump would know the first thing about it. And as the result, they have this picture completely skewed, and not skewed, it's totally, it's alternative universe picture. And that tells you that if an average American officer of the higher rank, like general, cannot develop data, and especially having access today with the internet, to a proper assessment, that tells you everything you need to know. And this is what actually rendered me to that, oh yeah, we failed. You always fail. I don't remember any assessment produced by any kind of the American organization which is in the public domain, and which is fed to such people like, ignorant lawyers on the, primarily lawyers, not all of them, on the in the Capitol, which are of course the Congress. They never produced anything which was remotely correct, never panned out anything. Yet they continue to present themselves as some kind of the, reputable organizations. And this actually spreads across the board. It's not only military, it's not only some intelligence thing. It is across the board. Economy, culture, history, they just not there. They never have been. And this precipitous decline in the mental capacity of the American elite, let alone European elite, we have been observing this for the last practically 40 years, to put it mildly. So, and that will be pretty much it about this whole situation with this attack of those, Ukrainians. But, just to wrap up this thing, here we have the New York Times. And again, they repeat the same thing. For some reason, they think that it's unpleasant, no doubt about it. But when Russia loses 3% of its bomber force, which is active, while in reality capable to actually replenish it immediately, it's like, okay, really, I'm lost for words. So here we have this New York Times, and there's this moron Paul Song. New York Times is the bunch of the basically terrorism supporting jerks, and so, and aiming to change Putin's calculus. Yeah, sure, they changed Putin's calculus, all right. Ukraine exposes Russian vulnerability. Well, yeah, there are some vulnerabilities. Nobody says that there are not. But what they say that Kiev attack on the country bomber fleet appear designed to show Russia's leader that continuing the war carries big risks for Moscow. Well, for Paul Son and for the whole this bunch of the frauds from New York Times, and again, New York Times is on the forefront of being charged at the, Die Deutsche Wochenschau and Goebbelsonian propaganda as war criminals. But they have to understand, any war carries risks. Absolutely, Russians are willing to take them. They take them and continue to do things. Now they ask this PhD from Britain, Mr. Acton, who works for Carnegie, another shyster organization, fraudulent organization, and for some reason he is Mr. Acton, who has PhD in theoretical physics. For some reason he is defined on the Carnegie website that he is a specialist in hypersonic weapons. I don't know, never heard about any hypersonic weapon produced in the West and the NATO. So, but yet here he is. And yeah, so they talk about, more broadly, the Ukrainian assault appeared aimed at stoking fear in Kremlin. Yeah, sure. About the other vulnerable targets in the Russian heartland where Kiev could inflict pain in the future. There are many, including military supply factors, blah, 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 blah. Mr. Acton said. Well, Mr. Acton is Captain Obvious. And yeah, he has no clue about anything related to the real war. But here he talks about even Russia's exposed, well, it's not exposed, but okay, fleet of nuclear submarines presents a potential target, though Moscow hasn't used this vessel in the war, and going after them would amount to a particularly risky escalation. Going after that, and especially Russian naval strategic missile submarine fleet, it's gonna start, no, not only war in Kiev. Somebody, and well, Britain may lose pretty much all of its fleet, and then Europe will get it. Simple as that. So, but again, Mr. Acton obviously never read, he doesn't understand Russia, he doesn't understand modern war, and although he passes for some reason, because he has PhD in theoretical physics for nuclear specialists, he's not. As most of people who work for those shyster organizations, he taught in King's College. I don't know what he taught. Evidently, whatever King's College produces as the military and policy people are a bunch of the morons. And as the result, we have what we have today. But yes, as always, they lie. As always, you can look up. There are all kinds of the neural network generated, well, computer graphics things about how they already destroyed the Crimean Bridge today. Of course, it's complete crap. There were one of the UAVs have been shut down, obviously, by Russian air defense. Some of the fragments fell on the road. Just to be sure, Russians closed it for 2 hours until the explosive specialist inspected the fragments. The bridge is open and the traffic is restored. But then again, as I already stated, the NATO was exposed as the paper tiger militarily, and so they will continue to commit terrorist acts. Some of them, for example, in Langley and especially in London, they will be popping champagnes. For example, the more they kill civilians, children, women, that's what they consider, well, that's the organizations which you have, that's in their, essentially DNA. Cultural DNA, because they obviously do not understand. There is not a single guy in CIA who understands what real war is. It just doesn't exist. The same goes for, especially for British. And as a result, just to give you kind of insight, really, I mean, it just. So we have Mr. Trump suddenly comes out yesterday. It's his truth. Whatever the name of this truth, details, whatever the hell this social network, just had a great talk with our military leaders. It is the strongest military we have ever had, including the fact that we are stockpiling weapons at a rate never seen before by our country. Hopefully, however, we will never have to use them. Yeah, when you have a guy who is the president of the country and the nuclear superpower, which the United States still remains the nuclear superpower, and he goes out and basically, he tweets non-stop. That's how it's called, tweet or whatever the hell the name. I'm not specialist in those social networks. And the reason I highlighted it in yellow because reading it yesterday, I was absolutely struck that, yeah, Mr. Trump lives in the alternative universe, including economically. And my first reaction was that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, US President, Mr. Henry Stimson, and George Marshall, those people who were responsible for the American military production during World War II, they probably are spinning in their graves. And I mean, they're spinning really fast after those statements by Mr. Trump, because obviously, how can Mr. Stimson talk about anything when he had 99 aircraft carriers? They produced 12,700 B-17 bombers. There are 2,700 Liberty ships, which were carrying primarily to England, but some of them went to Soviet Union, the Lend-Lease. And you look at this as like, is Mr. Trump getting the proper information? I can tell you immediately, no. The guy lives in alternative universe, and he is being pushed yet again into the corner, and he's busy with all kinds of the public relations things, and obviously there's no policy, there is no real tangible which he can present now that somehow everything improved in some field or another, except for a few executive decisions here and there. The immigration is a good one to tackle, but that's about it. And obviously when he talks about military and now, as Mr. Alistair Crook correctly stated, will Vladimir Putin trust him? No. Let's talk about this very straight. He never trusted him to start with. But was Mr. Trump aware of what was happening, what was getting ready by CIA and, and MI6 in Russia? Absolutely. He has a plausible deniability, but the fact is, come on, and it's just ridiculous. So, and as a result, Russians, yeah, that's it. And it's over. And, nobody gonna be talking to Mr. Trump. And as the result, his ambassador to Turkey, actually, he talks about that, I don't know. They talk about that Trump at the end of his rope on Ukraine. Ambassador talks about. First, I don't know. Trump should get the hell out of the way. I mean, he has no influence. He is like a kindergarten child who is, well, actually he is, spoiled child. And he cannot accept the fact that Russians don't care what he thinks. But he says the president would expect a guaranteed breakthrough from a potential meeting with Putin and Zelensky. US President Donald Trump appears to be at the end of his rope. So first, Mr. Putin is not meeting Mr. Zelensky, and even his ambassador, his name is Tom Barak. Barak indicates that any such meeting would not be need to be meaningful and yield substantive outcomes, while acknowledging that he could speak for the U.S. president directly. He added that Trump, who has openly expressed frustration with both Zelensky and Putin, is not known for his patience. Well, I mean, he's not known as the statesman. He now proved himself completely as the hot air balloon, and essentially he will be kicked down into his corner. He will be standing there whining, tweeting, and the nincompoops like Kellogg and those neocons and deep state, yeah, they're already in charge and nothing they can do. And so we can sit here and discuss the one or another possibility or probability of events happening, but as already stated, Russians present a memorandum and nobody cares what Trump feels. Russians do not. And now, as Mr. Alistair Crook correctly stated, Putin or collective Putin, no, they're not going to be taking him seriously. Russians have been accommodating enough for giving him a chance to perform himself and show himself as a real statesman. The statesman he is not. He is a politician and essentially showman. That's who he is. I mean, and what do you expect from the guy who is essentially TV personality primarily? And not to speak about the fact that he is the fraudster from the New York real estate, because, well, very few normal people work in that field there. So, and if that hasn't been enough, we have now the other situation which is developing, and this is only how to say it, it's only appropriate for the Trump administration. Defense News talks about this. It's 2 days ago, about 3 days ago. Behemoth Golden Dome may face lackluster scrutiny in Trump Pentagon. First, the Golden Dome is one of those, how to say it, it's a fraud. It's militarily it's impossible to do because of the nature of the hypersonic weapons and modern strike weapon systems, and well, the United States simply lacks the technology to do anything about it. All those satellites, yes, the United States can launch those satellites on orbit, trying to find in any way possible track the missiles. They can do nothing stopping them. And so Defense Secretary Hex's decision this week to cut more than half of the Pentagon's test and evaluation office personnel was driven in part by the concerns over the office plans to provide, get this, testing oversight for the Trump's administration $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense project, multiple sources told Defense News. In other words, they want to put up some kind of something there, which will cost a lot of money, will be absolutely useless against their real serious enemy, and like Russia, if Russia decides under some conditions, if the United States continues to behave itself, that it will escalate to the World War III, it's not going to stop anything. But what they do, they're gonna remove those people who are responsible for the testing. And as the result, look what we have. This is absolutely amazing. With staffing reduced to a skeleton crew and limited contractor backing, DOTE may be unable to provide adequate oversight for critical military programs, risking operational readiness and taxpayer dollars. Reid says, well, he's the Democrat, but he has absolutely correct point. In a statement, this kind of politically motivated interference undermines independent oversight and leaves warfighters and the public more vulnerable to untested, potentially flawed systems. Do you want to look at special military operation? Did you see how the American weapons performed? Let me put it this way. Not well, to put it mildly. Hex said that realization is tied to the Pentagon's American First strategy. So, you know what? It is a circus. It is a complete circus which we observe, and this is just all happens on the, at the background of Russians continuing to ramp up military production. Here, as you can see yourself, the latest batch of the T-80 BVM, brand new updated T-80s. It's not the T-80s you used to know. It is a completely new ballistics, all new sensors, new, new armor, all kinds of things, including Mangal, obviously, the active the defense against drones. So, and yeah, for those people and those all kinds of the, military people who think that tank warfare is done, yeah, I have bridge to sell them. Now, and so if you take a look at today's, however, tally, here we have, as you can see yourself, latest. This is, 1,500 a day, essentially. They continue to launch all kinds of the drones, primarily at civilian targets, and most of them are shut down, and Russians also talk about it's actually being implemented, albeit officially it's yet to be accepted, which it will be. Here it is. We have the conference which was happening in the Nizhny Novgorod, and he talks about that the Russian space people talk about that Russia will deploy more than 100 satellites to control drones. And all kinds of UAVs, including those on the surface and those cutters, not just the ones which fly, not only UAVs. And here is a little bit of the spread on that thingy. as you can see yourself. So the national project, which is CIPR 2025, their conference, that's how it's called. It's for the to be completed by 2030, 2031. So we have 886 Rasvet broadband internet satellites and 114 Earth remote sensing devices, which being launched already and will be launched by 2030, and that tells you pretty much where Russians go with all that. And especially when you consider the fact that, yeah, Russians happen to be, you know what, a space superpower. They kind of, you know, created a little bit during 90s, but it's all coming back. And yeah, just not yesterday, I'm lying, 2 days ago, Russian Ministry of Defense launched yet another the satellite, and Russians will continue to launch satellites, you know, sometimes small satellites when they, send them to the orbit in large quantities, or specially designed military satellites, primarily recon and communications, and they do the job really well to track everything, what is happening on the ground. And what is happening on the ground, as you already have heard before, there is a mandatory evacuation of the 202 hamlets, villages, and towns in Sumy Oblast, and Russian helicopters already seeing Sumy in their sights. So, and this is from the helicopters, not just UAVs or something like that. So, and what can I say? That pretty much tells you everything what is going on. But yes, in accordance to the media, in accordance to all those so-called specialists, experts, there are no experts really who speak publicly in the establishment media, Russians have to surrender. But evidently, for some reason, they do not do this. And that's why Mr. Trump is so upset. Poor kid. So, and this is what I wanted to tell you today about all that. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. Have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.